anyone here from the public who wishes to address the committee tonight? All right. Seeing none, we will move to our first agenda item for the evening, which is a presentation about the Child Care Fund by Sarah Edwards and Marcia Godley and Allison Morrison. Just to give a little background to everyone on this, I met with Sarah, Commissioner Plowman and I met with Sarah over at probate court earlier this week, and she brought us up to speed about an item concerning the Child Care Fund in our budget, which was cut for the 2019 budget. And in order for us to really understand what's happening with that, I asked them to come and present to us. These budget line items are required by statute, and they're going to explain all of what that means. And so I think the plan is that they're going to present tonight pretty in depth about what these funds are, what they do, what they're required for, and then next month this will probably end up on the finance agenda to make a budget adjustment. So, having said that, we'll turn the floor over to Sarah and her colleagues who are presenting to us tonight.
Thank you. And I will introduce, I am Sarah Edwards, the probate court administrator. This is Allison Morrison, who is the Department of Health and Human Services director here in Owasso. And then we also have Marcia Godley, who I think you all know, but works with me at the family court and probate court. And Tammy Frazee, who is sort of, they kind of have similar duties with regard to the Child Care Fund, one for DHS and one for the court. And then Melanie Davis is the program director at DHS. So we are truly a team. I mean, we really are. We have very different roles and interests, but we work all together with regard to the Child Care Fund. We know each other pretty well and have a good working relationship. Even when we don't agree, we work it out. So what we really wanted to do, and like Marlene said, is really just sort of educate you what the Child Care Fund is. I know some of you are new, some of you aren't, but it's a real mystery. Still, to us, sometimes it's a mystery, but this is an extremely complicated area. It is a pretty important, it's one of our huge funding sources, but it's very driven by state administrative rules, statutes, all kinds of guidance, and we jump through many hoops with regard to this fund. But it is an incredibly important fund because it is what we use to serve all our kids. All the programs that we have for kids, whether it be in the delinquency aspect or in the neglect aspect, comes from Child Care Fund.
Correct.
Go.
Yeah, so the County Child Care Fund is a main source of, as Sarah just said, to support all children that are in and out of home care for the Department of Health and Human Services. Those children that are in family foster care, or those children that have to be placed in residential treatment centers. And those children would be children that have much more severe needs and children that can't be held safely in foster homes in our community. For us, we have anywhere from 9 to 10 children that end up being placed in residential care in our county out of over 100 children, roughly a little over 100 children under our care and supervision. Right now, just for reference, there's 4 children that we're paying for out of county child care funds. If other sources are available, we'll get into how this all breaks down as we go through this. If other fund sources are available, they are utilized. The county is the fund of last resort, and that's always the case for the department. The court boards are a different story. So
yeah, and similarly, so she's talking about kids who have been removed from their parents because of abuse and neglect and put in foster care. And then the other side of it is our kids who come in for delinquency matters, who we have worked with, and I've found that they are no longer able to be maintained in the home and have to be placed out of the home. Sometimes those kids overlap. Sometimes they're delinquent kids who are also abused and neglected, and so then we share those kids, and that's where you've seen some of the transition of funds. But
over the history.
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically you have the PowerPoint in front of you, and it talks about the history of this fund, and that it originated back in 1955 with 5 different bills, and it was originally called the foster care bills. It moved on from there, and the original reimbursement formula was 90% of the first $2,000 spent by the county was reimbursed by the state. No reimbursement was provided to counties for costs from $2,000 up to a base amount. This allowed for 50% reimbursement for costs above what they called a base amount at that time. Public Act 280 actually changed a lot of what we do and then on into the act in 1997. But the Public Act 280, which you hear often referred to as Act 280, created the Office of Juvenile Justice Services and placed the County Child Care Fund under the direction of the Department of Health and Human Services. And they changed the reimbursement, and the law mandated 50% of eligible cost expended by the county being reimbursed by the state. The in-home care was added, and reimbursement at 50% was allowed for these community-based programs. So Sarah, under the court, has several, she'll talk about those in-home care programs. As far as the Department of Health and Human Services, we currently only have one in-home care component, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This changed in 1997. The state reimbursed approximately $32 million for the county child care fund expenditures, and they removed the cap. The reimbursement doubled to counties to approximately $70 million, and 50% of the total to approximately $140 million. So it's changed over time. Michigan statute appoints the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as the entity charged with developing and implementing the county child care reimbursement policies and procedures. So we have an entire handbook that governs all of this. And then Chapter 400 of the Michigan Compiled Laws, which is titled the Social Welfare Act, provides specific language regarding the juvenile justice services and county child care fund reimbursement. There's additional legal authorities around this. There's probate code, which is listed there. The MCI Institute Act, Child Care Organization Laws, County Juvenile Officer Payments, Public Acts. As you can see, they're all listed. There's many of them.
And just for the Michigan Compiled Laws 400.117A, and those combined statutes are what really talks about the counties having to have child care funds and having to fund. Every county has to have a child care fund, and every county has to fund these services, and that's where that comes from, is that statute specifically. And just for reference, we're not going to talk about dollars and cents because we want to do that at finance next month, but just for reference, our approved child care fund budget for the year that was approved through the state was approximately 1.6 million combined. So just so you know what kind of money we're talking about, that's what our budget is.
What year is that, Sarah?
Current year.
For 2019?
Well, state child care fund runs fiscal.
Okay.
So for fiscal 19, yes.
October 18th.
October 18,
September 30th.
yeah.
29th.
Which it makes our life just even
We're
that
on
much
two
more,
different.
much more difficult, because we have to run under two.
Yes.
We have two budgets, and as
So
you can imagine,
right.
we
The
run.
county budget runs January to December,
Right.
and the fiscal year for the state.
And needless to say that those two women back there pull their hair out because of that regularly, because it's really hard to do the balancing on the two.
Vote for a fiscal year.
But that's sort of the statutory history and where it comes from.
Do you want me to sit down, or are you going to do this?
You can sit down. I don't think they mind if we sit down and talk.
Okay. All right.
That's fine.
Okay, any questions yet before I change a little bit? And again, the idea of the child care fund is in-home first and out-of-home second, and that's basically the goal of all the juvenile courts and all of child welfare in Michigan, obviously, is placement as last resort. And so if you go to we can talk about the sub-accounts. I think we sort of hit on that there's the court account, and then there's the DHS account. There are both sub-accounts that come within and join to be that entire combined budget. But we submit one budget, but it's separated up into court and DHS. And like we talked about before, sometimes we do transfers within that fund. If she's spent more, I have, just based on the kids that we have that year, we move those funds around, but it's all within the child care fund budget. Again, the 50%, currently the way it works is that we pay it, and then we submit, and the state pays us back 50%. In 2020, that's going to change significantly. You can look forward to that. It will probably be a very good thing. It's going to be state pays first, so they're going to pay it first, and then they're going to, it's going to go back the other way. So that'll be really nice, because we won't have to be expending the whole amount and getting half back. We'll just only have to really expend the half. So that will be a nice change.
If I could ask you just a quick question, you said $1.6 million. for this fiscal year that we're in, is that the total amount, is that what the state will reimburse, what is that number?
That is what we have told the state we were gonna spend,
Okay,
and then they send half back. So 50 reimbursement would be half that.
okay.
That's what you see, right?
It's $1
Yeah,
$1,677,000.
1.6 million, yeah. Again, I just wanted to give an
Yeah.
idea of what we were
Okay,
talking
sorry to
about.
interrupt.
No, that's fine. And that budget, it was submitted, goodness, way back.
Has to be in by September
Yeah,
30th
so
and then
we-
approved.
And we had it in, or I think we
Early.
had it back in July, and it has to be approved by the court, the judge, the chairman of the board, and then it goes to.
County commissioner,
County
chairperson.
commissioner, yeah, then it goes to them, and then it goes to the state. So everybody signs off on that budget. Again, totally separate from county budget, but it's just the budget we submit. Okay, so going to, there's a flow chart, which I think is a really nice flow chart, if you go to that. And that really separates out that these kids that are served by the Child Care Fund are what we call state and court ward, and so that's the funding. So you see, the court takes jurisdiction over these kids for whatever reason they come, be it delinquent or neglect, and then you see it goes into the two separate categories. We have most of ours are court wards, so most of what we have is on the left, and then you can see that we go to DHS supervised or court supervised, and you can see how it goes back down into Child Care Fund, and then we get the 50%. So that's a really good flow as to whether or not we're talking about foster care kids, or whether or not we're talking about delinquency kids who need programming.
And it actually outlines the different funding sources. So when we say that kids are funded by other fund sources, it depends upon the income of the family, and then if there's two parents in the home, there's a whole breakdown about how kids are evaluated and how they determine how families are evaluated and what funding source is arrived at after they take all of the information into account. So we have a number of children that are funded federally by Title IV funds, is what they're titled. We also have children whose parental rights are terminated who are funded by state, ward, board, and care. So the kids that the county are funding are less than those other funding streams. They, I think at any given time, we're funding around 14 or up to 20 children in family foster care. Family foster care, just to give you an idea. The rest would fall out of those 100 children if they're out of home care and foster care under the other sources. So it's a small number, and it's the children that we can't fund any other way that the county is responsible for.
Yeah, and we're real careful. We work really closely with their department, particularly on the Title IV, because that comes all right down to the way you phrase your orders, and we've worked.
Check your boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it truly comes down to the paperwork and how the orders look, and you can make a mistake that can cost a lot of money if you just don't check a box on an order. So it's a pretty it takes a pretty big level of expertise to not mess it up. And we really try to make sure we're getting as many kids in that Title IV as we can. And I'm proud to say that we haven't had too many.
It's increased over time, where our penetration rate is what the state measures. It's increased. We used to be well under 40%, and our penetration rate, as they call it for Title IV, is over 50% now. And that's a good measure across the state to compare. Especially, it used to be that I don't know how to say if the poverty cycle increased or, but also the criteria on which they evaluate them has gotten even more restrictive. So it's rather telling that we have a higher 4E penetration rate.
Yeah. Any questions on the flow chart? Understand? Okay. The next page, I just thought I'd sort of clarify when we talk about the court and what we talk about, what that means. So when we get our delinquent youth in, we start with probation services and diversion programs. You've heard, I'm sure, about our teen court, and so starting with our intensive probation, those are the kids who have met a criteria for intensive probation, which could be concerns with the family. It's pretty broad, but if we think they just need a little bit more attention, then maybe a good kid who did something stupid, who's right on the right track, we get a lot of those. So our intensive probation services, we have all of our probation officers are half-time intensive, and what that means is that we can get half of their salaries back from 50% of half their salaries back from the state. So they are not fully funded by the county. We should note that because I know that's also been a big deal for the board lately, that they are 25% funded by the state. So you guys don't pay, we don't, on our budget, we don't pay 25% of their salaries, which is really great. And also, new this year is my salary as well as Marcia's. We've now been able to claim 25%, so that's just money off our budget, which is really great. So, intensive probation service, weekly contact, so that we have the salary of the probation officers, all the rules they do, all those programs. We have our Night Rider program, which you all may remember that that's something that we started a few years ago, and we came to the board for funding on that. We had a grant. We've really had really good success with that. That's a group of people that go out at night to monitor our probationers. And we really have seen that we've kept some kids out of detention, a fair amount of detention, because we have feet on the ground in the homes at night to monitor the probation rules and what's going on. And this kind of goes in the way it goes up. From then, we have our youth center, which works kids who are court involved, who are expelled or suspended. Instead of going home and playing Xbox, they go to the youth center. We have credit recovery. We have a certified teacher that RESD has provided in the past for us, which they're still willing to do. We're trying to locate one currently. And they actually work on their schoolwork when they're suspended or expelled. And if they need to go in the evening to make up homework to keep them on track. And one of the big things that we're seeing is truancy, because truancy is our onion that you peel back and becomes so many more issues. Many of our kids are being referred by the schools because they just aren't functioning in schools, and we take them on for truancy. And then we peel that onion back and it becomes so much more, and many of those kids become DHS involved potentially, or other issues are coming out from that. And mostly it's the family situation is just usually a really dysfunctional. But those kids are going to the youth center, and we have summer school. We're able to recover entire years of school for credit recovery through that center and get the kids back on track to graduate. And it's just that many more functioning members of society we're going to have.
Sarah, was this some of the activity that you had requested for a second vehicle to transport kids?
Yes. We are having tremendous problem right now with transportation to and from our youth center, because many of those families have no transportation. These are really low functioning families. We have 1, 2 this week. They just don't have transportation, and we have one transport vehicle, but it runs other things and we can't dedicate it to the youth center.
You need 2 once in a while.
Well, and SATA has recently said that they aren't going to be able to really service anymore. I have to really look into that, but we have used SATA extensively. They've now pretty much shut us down, and I don't know what we're going to do, because we can say you're court ordered to get your kid here, but when the parent says, I don't have a car, how are we going to get the kid there? And it's really not the kid's fault that they're not there, but I mean, these are, it's a really problem. So you may see me back here saying, I really need to use some of this money we've saved in other areas to buy a second vehicle for them to be able to run kids.
When we met the other day, we talked at length about what type of vehicle. I mean, if you had used Caravan, Chrysler Caravan, Dodge,
right,
whatever,
and we need to cage,
that would be very helpful. I mean, it doesn't have to run very far. It's busy around town, so to speak.
Yeah. And we do have our summer community service that we run, and we do DeVries, we do the gardens, and we do a million different projects, and we really need to have solid transportation for that. And we used our transport vehicle, or I bugged Brian for, it's just not working anymore, so we're gonna have to figure something out for youth center transportation.
When you come back next month for the financial end of this discussion, you might want
I think I'm going to need to, because I need to get in place before summer, because that's when it's going to really amp up.
Then it's almost summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Next month.
Right.
And just to clarify, these were things that were included in your budget that you presented last year, and things have been cut.
Yes.
So that's why we're having this presentation tonight, is
Right.
because you are underfunded,
Right.
partially for what is statutorily required.
Correct. Well, all of child care fund is, and so I just want you to know, when we say that the word statutory required to have this fund and fund it, that this is what this includes for our portion. I think everybody understands foster care a little bit better, or that, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into our child care fund. Then we have the boot camps and restorative justice weekends. We use boot camp weekends, and we have a facility that runs restorative justice, which means they have them work all weekend, so it's kind of like a work camp, and they work. Moving up from there, secure detention, we use the Genesee County's secure detention, which is a nice quick run, but we do use that. And then residential treatment for the kids who are not functioning at all the other levels. And we currently have a boy in residential treatment down in Monroe who isn't functioning in that facility. And I'm taking a trip down there Friday with his caseworker, and we're looking at having to put him in it's already secure, and possibly in an out-of-state higher level, which is going to be prohibitively just horribly expensive. We're looking at Boys Town for him.
Yeah, and part of our discussion, and I know that we talked before last week with Marlene and I, at times the county has individuals like this. There may be a year we don't have to send them out of state.
Last year.
Yeah, we don't have to send them out, let's say, for long-term,
Yeah.
long-term housing. But there's been years, I know in the past, where we had 3 or 4 to 1 year, and it was really expensive. That year we had to transfer 70, 80 grand into your account just to make it balance.
That's right.
And it was not because of anything except out-state residential treatment for youth is extremely expensive.
It is.
And sometimes has to be done.
And yeah, you gotta understand, this is a boy who was in a self-contained classroom. I mean, so he already had one-on-one. They couldn't maintain him in the school. And I mean, we have to do something with him. And now we have him in one, and they're saying they can't. It's horrible. And we can talk about the mental health crisis for juveniles in the state, but that's a whole different. There's no place to put
We have
him.
another meeting on that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we could say, why not put him in a mental hospital? Well, there aren't any, so there's that answer. Tethers, we're trying to use tethers to keep kids in the home. We do drug testing a lot as probation services and contracted therapists. That comes up a lot with the sex offenders. A lot of times they can go get like Catholic Charities or more affordable sliding scale, but when we need to really specialized treatment like sex offender therapy for offenders, then that's something that isn't available here, so that kind of thing.
Just for a frame of reference, we have 2 youths that were declared incompetent two by the court.
Mm-hmm.
So there was abuse and neglect issues in one case. The other case was a dependency petition. So we have 2 youth, anywhere from the age of 14 to 16 at this point in time, that are going to be under our care and supervision until they're 18. And they are in facilities that cost $400 a day, and they are county funded. So there's no way out of this for us, for at least, and we're working on reassessing at all times, new psychologicals, new competency exams if they can be provided, but these 2 boys, they have such severe issues that we've had to provide one-on-one in residential care for one of them. So they've been supervised while they're in a more secure setting at that level because of sex offending, because of impulse control or lack thereof. They can't be put in a foster home or exposed to elementary schools or middle schools. So we don't, again, our budget is going to remain consistent at least for the next couple of years. And we have one other youth that is more recent to us that has touched both our systems, and we see that very frequently. I did want to mention, we have one in-home care component, as it's called, and it is a supervised visitation program for children in foster care. And we have contracted that out. We have a provider that does, for all the children that are not of home care, they have visits with their family. We have a limited number of workers, so we can't provide the amount of contact between the families. And we utilize other state funds to the best of our ability and federal funds to provide all our other services. This is the only in-home care component that we ask the county to assist us with. And there was a 50% reimbursement on this, and we'll talk about that next week. But it was underfunded, and it is a signed contract. So this contract's been in place for, I want to say, at least 7 years now. And it's been a consistent service to our families, and it helps with reunification. Because they're able to see their families more and they're engaged, hopefully see children go home faster, and we measure all of that and try to document the significance of the service. So that's our one in-home component. We did used to have a couple more, but we've reduced it down to 1 in the past few years.
The next few pages talk about, and this, let's just talk about the application process. I don't know that we need to necessarily bore you with those details, but it just sort of illustrates the fact that we have a lot, like I said, this is a very closely monitored fund program at the state level. We have to really make sure that everything we're doing meets the very specific criteria. We have very constant, I mean, I know that Marcia and Tammy talk to the state people and have communication with them probably, if not daily, weekly for sure, just on the overview and getting approval. So it's not just, oh, we feel like doing this with these kids, let's just nilly-willy do it. It's very heavily monitored.
So I have a question, and I see these dates here in this budget deadline and the annual plan for the application process. Once that's been approved, which is here on December 15th, it says the annual plan and budget is approved by the CCF office.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that you submitted your budget request, and then the cuts were made here after that. So did you
Yeah,
have to report back to the CCF office that the budget has been changed here?
They are
or
not.
They're not aware?
There is no, I don't want to say no connection, but there's no, I hate to say this, but they don't care.
Well,
I mean,
the budgets do have to align. If I will have to come back we will have to approach you and say, our budget is not sufficiently funded, we need additional funds transferred in. It's required by state that we meet the requirement to have a funded budget.
Right.
We can't not have a funded
Right.
budget.
Their
if that
answer
makes
would be,
sense.
they have to pay it.
Doesn't exist.
So I'm really sorry to
they're
say
not-
that, but it's true. They would say
That's what
they're
they say
mandated by
is,
statute.
they're mandated, they have to pay
So
it.
on their side, they have approved your budget, and
Yes.
now the question is,
And
we
our-
have to fund it on our
Right,
side.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And we can't just say, oh, we're gonna cut,
Right.
Yeah.
this much of it because,
And that's the way it's been for
For
eons.
since 19 whatever.
yeah, go back to the.
And then they believe that by bringing it to the chair and the signature on the budget, that's saying we've seen and approved your budget.
Yeah,
Whether we agree, so then we come back and argue if you didn't, or discuss.
right. And to be honest, these dates seem these seem.
There are
they're-
dates.
They're a little bit earlier than that. I mean,
We are.
sometimes they get a backlog in approving it, or sometimes they'll say you need one more thing, because we have to write up all our components and what we do. It's almost like writing a grant, to be honest.
We
But
provide data.
it happened a lot earlier than December 15th.
Yeah.
It just did. There's a page about the basic grant, and that's just something important to notable because it's 100%. They give it to us, and that's not even anything we have to pay. They just give us 100% of that, and for our portion, it's $10,000. But you can only use it for very, very, very specific things, and we use it for our tethers and our drug screens and transporting.
It's
if
to
need be.
prevent children from further delinquency
Yeah.
or out of home. Last page is just, we report out monthly. We provide data and spreadsheets to the state showing how many children we paid for, what we paid for, how many residential children, all of it is all inclusive, and it's all comprised and included in our statewide system called MySACWIS.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, committee members? on this presentation?
As you can see, it's pretty complicated, and I know that our staff has really taken very seriously to learn the system, and Marcia's really a wealth of knowledge now. She's
Well, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and taking time to put this very detailed presentation together. And we will, and I'm assuming that you'll put some numbers together and for finance probably next month.
we'll be submitting for finance next
Make sure
month.
that the finance people are aware of, some of them are here, but not all, so.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
This is the one that we were. Yeah, not that one. Do you want that?
All right.
All right, committee members, are there other agenda items that we want to consider?
Oh,
Yes.
Chairman, there's a position that is ready to be filled, it's a vacancy, for a deputy district court clerk. We didn't get the information in time to have it on tonight's agenda. we would probably have it available for tomorrow during your portion that's in the district court.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we put that on our docket for tomorrow's meeting.
Is there a second? Support?
Okay, we'll have it on.
Sorry, who seconded that?
John.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Horvath.
Two Johns.
They're ready to fill it. They have a candidate that's been there.
So now it's time for our second call to the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this committee? All right, hearing none, I'll declare that the meeting is adjourned.
The gavel. Oh, yeah, the traditional gavel. Yeah. Thanks again for everyone coming.
Yeah. call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, anyone here from the public that wishes to address this board? Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item 4. Consider appointing Ralph Ringans to the Valley Area Agency on Aging Board of Directors as a senior representative to fill a vacancy effective immediately and expiring on 12/31/19, or until a successor is appointed, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this, aye?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 5, consider adopting the MERS defined benefit plan agreements to establish a defined contribution plan for all new hires in the Shiawassee County Medical Care Facility, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, on this next one, Mike, if you can help me out on this, 6 and 7, or in the alternative. So what are we,
Actually, I apologize. Number 5 takes roll call. This is the adoption of a plan
okay,
for MERS. I apologize for that.
no, that's all right.
Roll call until Thursday, does it?
This is just happening.
Yeah, this is a committee.
I apologize. Apologize again.
Okay.
Second time.
Apology accepted.
That's good.
Remember Thursday.
I will.
All right.
Okay, so agenda item 6. Consider adopting the MERS resolution establishing authorized signatories for MERS contracts and service credit purchase approvals, authorizing the SCMCF administrator to execute future documents, and authorize the board chair to execute the same, or in the alternative.
Yes, and I think I think Casey included the explanation letter from
Okay.
MERS. What it is that, and they have MERS employees down there now, and their administrative items, as they come through, are handled by them through their administrator, and ultimately the board that runs the medical care facility. We don't have a lot of involvement with it. Because they're setting up a new plan here, they just need that authorization. You see it in item number 6 there, it's a single page, that allows that administrator to administer this plan as well as whatever other ones they got going at the same time. If we don't do that, then we are the ones that handle all of the items that come through with respect to the plans. That means approving or not approving, service credit requests, and various other items in dealing with MERS.
So we want option 6.
The option 6 would probably be the best way, and it would actually preserve what I believe is going on with their other MERS employees anyway. This is just authorizing for this.
Yeah, this is the new plan.
Yes.
Just backing up there, number 5. You know, when I was reading the wage study, I noticed that there was a lot of commentary that most counties now have gone 401k or 457.
Yep.
Period. And we're one of the, it's better for us as a county that our obligations are, once we disperse monies after the year for, matching funds or whatever, then we're out of it. Of course, we have a long time before we're out of paying our pensions. Did they consider that? I mean, that's why I wanted somebody here today, that instead of doing a defined contribution, maybe, did they ever talk about going to just a regular retirement, like a 401k?
That's what this is.
That's what this is.
Well, it says here, defined contribution plan for all new hires in number 5.
Yes, defined contribution plans They can set them up through a 457.
Oh,
They can set them
okay.
up through a 401k,
Oh,
but
okay.
that is in fact how they do it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay, now I know.
Yep.
Now I know. Okay, very good.
I had the same questions.
Yeah, I'm looking at that and I'm going, you know, okay.
No, that is the definition of defined contribution.
Okay.
The money is paid in, there's no unfunded liability because
Yeah, you would,
it becomes their money. The money they put in is their money right from the start, and as you can see, there's a sliding scale. They use a 3-year one for the money that the county, or in this case, their board puts in. Their money is, the county's money is vested at 50% after 1 year, 75% after 2 years, 100% after 3 years,
gotcha.
and it continues in. So, and then any money they put in, I mean, it behooves you to put in money of your own too.
Yeah,
That's always yours,
I mean, a lot of times what they'll do,
but it's there and it's vested and
I mean, for the sake of argument, I would like to have asked them, I mean, if they're gonna say, we're gonna fund 3% of your wages, but we'll match up to 5%. I mean, are they doing anything like that?
it looks to me like they are strictly putting in 3%.
Okay,
The state of Michigan has since 1997 been on a defined contribution plan where they automatically put in whatever your salary is, they add 4% and that goes into a 401k and they will match you up to another 3. So as long as you put at least 3% of your own in, the state pays 7%.
yeah,
But, yeah, you know what you're gonna pay, it doesn't fluctuate, you're not trying to actuarially account for future obligations, which can really compound any unfunded liability you have, because if the assumptions change, then they change. In this case, the money's in there and it's locked in, and you won't owe anything more than that.
yeah, I'm well aware.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, do we have a motion on the floor then? Did we have a second?
What was the motion for, item 6?
Item 6.
Yeah. I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor, signify, excuse me, who's the first? Who motioned? I mean, Gary, go.
No,
Well, Mary, would you make the motion?
no, he was gonna make it.
Oh.
Okay.
I still don't feel comfortable with what my understanding of this whole thing. What is it we're doing here?
They are for new hires, they are creating a defined contribution plan, still through MERS.
And this is still regarding Valley Area Agency on Aging?
No, it has nothing to do with council on
It's
aging.
Pleasant View.
This is Pleasant View Medical Facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with council on aging.
Gotcha. All right, I understand completely. Yeah, I'll make the motion for item 6.
Go for it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. So then we can skip item 7. Any other agenda items to come before this board? Seeing none, call to the public. Nobody? All right, this meeting is adjourned.